So as you can see, we have a node service, an Amazon Elastic Container Service. And essentially we have a load balancer that is handling the DNS name input that is then balancing the connection into our container cluster, where our container node is running the application itself through HTTP port 80 and a couple other ports like 8080 and 29763. Essentially, the way that this works is treyyoder has a Quake JS Docker repository on GitHub. So all you do here is download this code as a zip file. Once you have it downloaded and unzipped, you put it into a repository as so. So if you can see my mouse cursor here, this Docker file is pre-built, and all of the files on the left-hand side here are already pre-built with that repository. So the only thing you have to do is create this file here, the main.terraform file. And this just provisions that container. You don't have to rewrite this by looking at what's on my screen. Instead, I've already created a repository for this Terraform file where you could just download it and follow my README instructions there for a step-by-step of how to properly deploy this app container. For more in-depth, you can keep watching. And if you have any problems with this, just let me know. So the first thing I want to go over is our provider block. This is a monolithic main.terraform file, which means it's really simple. I didn't want to include too many modules in different files for it to be confusing. For your provider, you're just going to replace it with your region. I'm using US-East-1. You can replace this with Europe or whatever you need to replace it with. The next resource is our virtual private cloud and our subnet, as well as our internet gateway. We'll also be creating a route table with the gateway ID of our AWS internet gateway. We will also associate that route table with our subnet ID and our route table ID. Next, we're going to be creating our ECS cluster. Our cluster is going to be using the node task with a Fargate, which is our compatibility requirement. Here we're listing our CPU and memory usage and our execution role. We're also defining our container variables. So we're putting in the name of our container and where the image is. So this is the path to our image repository. Now this image repository, the way that you generate that is you do a Docker build with this command here, and then you do a Docker push with this command here. And as I commented here, you're just going to replace the region with yours and then replace this account ID parameter here with your account ID. Then you're going to tag the Docker image by, again, updating your account ID and pushing the Docker image with command. Once this is pushed, we will go to the container registry, where we can see our repository name is node app, and here is our URI. So coming back to our VS Code, this is the repository that is targeting. And here are the container ports that we want to open on it. And definition ends our container definition block with all of our key pair variables. Next, we focus in on the node service. So we create the cluster, task definitions, and the launch type with the network configurations and the load balancer and the listener. We also go over the main load balancer, including our security group and our load balancer type, which is application. And we're also going to want to target our main target group, opening up our port 80 for web URL access, and enabling health checks. Next, we add the listener again to the load balancer, opening up the port 80 on HTTP on our listener. And Following up with our security group, where we're allowing all our ingress traffic from all of the ports that we need to our egress, which is a placeholder for we're allowing ports connections going out to any port and any IP address. If you want to be more secure, you can edit the CIDR blocks to only include subnets that you want to allow access coming in from. For testing purposes, I just leave it at this, which allows all incoming networks. Moving down to the repository, that's where we name our repository. Going back to this again, this is the name of the repository here. And finally, working with our task execution role and our task execution policy. Our JSON encoded block allows us to pass in multiple variables more easily. And this version is the version of the JSON encoded block. So if you were to edit this to give it today's date, the Terraform would fail to deploy. So it's best to leave this as is. The next is the resource block for the task execution policy, which shows the URL path to the policy that you're setting. I'll be putting the links in the description below to both treyyoder's Quake.js Docker repository, as well as my repository for the main.tf file, as well as a step-by-step guide of how to deploy it with Terraform. If you have any questions or any problems with this, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I accept all friend requests and messages, and I'm happy to help anybody. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great day.